Hello, something guys and gals. This is something guy 912 talking about the post-election results and the literal salt mine boom from the regressive left. As it stands, I show no excitement or faith in Donald Trump's victory over Hillary Clinton, as I believe that Donald Trump, while mostly authentic on his viewpoints, stands on simplistic policy decisions as well as the building blocks for moderate Republican policies like gun control or the lack thereof, and of being the moral busybodies when it comes to what pornographic material we are allowed to view. But to see the absolute political upset of Hillary Clinton, media pundits like the Huffington Post declaring that Hillary had a 98% chance to win the election compared to Trump the world over, and of the pointless and redundant protests that have occurred in my home state of Oregon as a result of the victory does put a wide smile on my face, especially when it comes to the reactions of the SJWs who originally said that Trump was childish to even suggest the possibility of not accepting the election results if he went to Hillary Clinton, yet throw a temper tantrum themselves when the opposite occurs. Many of these reactions are not self-reflecting analysis on their conviction of gender identity and attempting to influence the people by guilt and force of censorship. They are not an admittance of tainting what was once a principled liberal and democratic party. No, it is another curious case of doubling down on any accountability on their part, despite the evidence so glaring that to look away is to spell defeat of your own perceived narrative. We have seen this doubling down with Jessica Valenti complain about women being objectified in media, then question why sexy women are being demonized. We have seen this with Zarna Joshi making a 4-part video in regards to a fucking dad joke. We have seen Lacey Green through her disingenuous Twitter posts about the nuances of the election results and how divided and divisive we are, only to spew the same SJW buzzwords once the results do not toe in her favor. This doubling down mentality only serves the will of those who cannot accept responsibility for their own faults and will do anything they can to bring the finger on those who democratically chose a candidate who, for better or for worse, wanted to change the current establishment as it was. I want to dig in on 3 particular individuals who have made relatively short responses to the election results, yet all are similar in the same vein of switching the narrative of Donald Trump's victory as an assessment of the patriarchal system and not of the absolute downfall of the Democratic establishment and the authoritarian leftist cult that has infested itself in a multitude of media. The willful dodging of the Latino, Black, and women who voted for Trump surprisingly better than most expected, as the leftist sheeple continue to cry wolf, or in this case, sexist, misogynist, bigoted, whatever the case may be, continue to lose faith in the republic that claims to speak for them. Anita Sarkeesian, Marina, and Lacey Green, 3 towers on the totem pole of everything that is wrong with the left, trying to spin the story of Trump's victory like as if it was completely out of their hands, and look through their own painted glass ball to predict that Trump is running a campaign of hate before even getting his inauguration speech on the 20th of next year. Let's start with Marina's poem about Trump.
If you voted for Trump, and I know this isn't an insignificant percentage, about half of you voted for a man who says that it's okay to grab women by the pussy.
Am I really fucking surprised that Marina of all people couldn't even get the story straight? Trump did not advocate for grabbing women by the pussy. In that conversation, which was supposed to be private, mind you, Trump said that the wealth and success he amassed permits him to grab women by the pussy. While it isn't right for him to assume that women want him to touch them by the pussy, he does seem to take their consent into account otherwise. Not to mention that not once did he advocate for grabbing women by the pussy as a policy decision. That would have been a political nightmare for him that there would have been no coming back from it. Also, to assume that I'm some kind of simpleton who votes for someone for the mere practice of womanizing does say a lot about your respect towards those who differ from you, now doesn't it? I could just easily say that you are in support of a corrupt politician by the mere basis of her having a fucking vagina who disingenuously prowls on about the wage gap despite it not existing and never going into strict detail about how she is to go about fixing it, other than the reaffirmation that she will somehow. But I know better that there are some people who simply think Donald Trump would be more disastrous of a president as a result of his extremely shallow catalog of policy decisions. Thanks for poisoning the well, not 2 sentences in, Marina.
Well, not quite half of you, because the popular vote and all that, but the Electoral College is only a problem when your candidate doesn't win.
And yet you are complaining about the Electoral College because your candidate didn't win. While I do think the Electoral College does need some reform, the problem with sending a popular vote only is that major states like California, New York, and Florida would be the deciding votes of a 50-state government. Now, that doesn't sound fair for the majority of states that don't even tip 1 million people, now does it?
My friends and my family, people I know, people I don't know, are terrified.
Are you about to go on another tirade where you list a bunch of demographics that you claim to speak for when you only speak for yourself? Surely an SJW trite like you wouldn't do something like that, would you?
Women, people of color, Muslims, immigrants, disabled people, gay people, bi people, trans people, people who are branded as different.
Oh, what am I thinking? Of course you pull out the demographics I use as a shield for my argument trope. Unfortunately for you, some of these people in fact voted for Trump despite you claiming to look out for them. Milo Yiannopoulos, the most dangerous faggot in the world, supported Trump and has gone on implicit and explicit detail about all the wonderful black cocks he'd like to suck. 51% of white women voted for Trump over Hillary. Trump won Florida, a state that is dominated by a Latino demographic, and Trump himself, just weeks after his victory, made the bold declaration to take care of the hateful Islamic rhetoric that has indeed attacked gay people for being different. But wait, we can't talk about the Muslims killing gay people because being brown falls on the oppression stack higher than being gay, now doesn't it? If anyone is trying to make these demographics out to be branded as different, it's fucking people like you. Demographics are not fucking opinions. A collective does not speak for all individuals, and an individual does not speak for a collective. Just like you do not speak on behalf of all women, colored people, whatever.
We are scared for our lives.
You are scared for your life, Marina. This is about you, nothing else. You can't bring a single fucking person on that big list of demographics because you don't have anyone else shaking their boots over God Emperor Trump but you. And you do not speak on behalf of everyone else, you patronizing cunt.
Donald has always thrived off of fear-mongering.
Wow, that's ironic coming from you, as you just said in the last few lines that all of these said demographics that you claim to speak for are scared for their lives. That wouldn't be fear-mongering, would it? Without any claim to show that Donald is actually continuing to attack said demographic? The only tactic of fear-mongering that Donald has used is in regards to the Islamic terrorism that has immigrated its belief across the world under the pretense of being good for everyone else. Nothing more, nothing less.
He's built his entire political campaign around painting our political climate as the worst possible scenario.
Well, let's imagine a political climate where you will be silenced for what you say lest it offend someone, sent to the gallows for being white, forced to castrate yourself for being male, and to give up every luxury of life you earn for the sake of one who wasted it on meaningless garbage. And to put that behind a person who is so two-faced in their beliefs that she can say yes and no to belief you ask of her in the same fucking sentence, who wants to make the Cold War great again, and yeah, I imagine that could spell a recipe for disaster. Not to say that Trump would warrant better, but not trying to silence others' speech or demonize others for attributes they cannot control and trying to improve foreign relations does sound a bit peachier than what you'd ever propose.
Diversity and progress as something to actively fear.
See, the problem is, Marina, your definition of diversity and progress are to force demographics into working roles and acting roles regardless of their merit, and to set a precedent of which white men must feel inherently guilty of their innate privileges, lest they be labeled whatever buzzword comes out of your wretched gums. You and your social justice cronies are at fault for making the words diversity and progress ugly in the eyes of those who do not define every trivial manner as a slight on an entire community of people.
Well, here we are. We are afraid. This is the worst possible scenario.
Marina, nothing has happened. Trump hasn't even had his inauguration speech. Hell, he's under hot water with Hillary trying to do recounts to ensure that Trump was not rigged into winning the election. You have made this fantasy dream in your head that if Trump were to win, the fucking gas chambers will be running 9 to 5 on your marginalized people of color and genders, because it's the only defense mechanism you have against actually admitting fault for your constant flagellating of those sharing an opinion that differs yours.
A man who has never been told no sits on a throne that you built for him.
And when you say you mean you, because it is you who built this throne for him, not me. You couldn't attack Trump on a single credible point. You went to character assassinations and subsequently guilt by association on those who supported Trump. You demanded that he be banned from Facebook and banned from traveling to Britain because he said some off-color things about women at some point in his life. Not to mention, Hillary built that throne for Trump too by ensuring the primaries that Trump would win so that Hillary would have the easiest role for her to win. But unbeknownst to her, you can't draw blood from the fucking stone of enthusiasm from the masses. And that ultimately sealed her fate. As Razorfist would like to put it,
she propped up a straw man and the straw man came to life and fucked her in the ass.
A man who is exempt from paying taxes,
which he wants to change and has admitted to using those loopholes into the system, but go on.
A man who thinks he can have his way with women's bodies despite their objections.
Which I already stated is a bit presumptuous of him, but that still implies that he takes a woman's consent into mind, and that said accusations of women assaulting him were immediately dropped just weeks after.
A man who our series of checks and balances will utterly fail. As president.
It pains me to think of the hours you slept through civics class to not understand that the president does not, in fact, hold a monopoly on all decisions. What cooked up nonsense you are thinking of is a monarchy, which is not the prevailing government we are standing by.
When marginalized people say that we are afraid...
When I say that marginalized people say that we are afraid, I am inferring a tricky tactic to project my own insecurities and emotions onto other people I claim to speak for, but cannot bring up one person in particular because I'm a patronizing cunt.
We are afraid of a looming reality that we already see unfolding.
And would that reality be of the disconcerting Democratic Party failing to speak to those who they claim to represent, and the SJWs finally getting a cold hard taste of truth and spitting it in my face and changing the paradigm to what feeble utopia they can crawl into? Or is it the fake reality of a Trump candidacy hell-bent on getting your demi-queer trans boys and trans girls into the Trump Gestapo? Because one of those things is more real than the other.
A rise in hate speech, harassment, threats of violence, and now actual violence.
All of which have come out of people decrying Trump of his victory. People like you who damage property that do not hold any relevancy to Donald Trump. People like you who drag people out of their cars and beat them senseless for choosing Trump. People like you who fucking kick their kids out of their home because they voted for Trump in a mock election that does not hold any influence on the actual election. You can drape the fence white all you want, but you can't fucking deny that the splinters in the wood are still reminiscent of your doing.
Go home. You don't belong here. Make America great again.
The last 4 lines are the only things I hear when I see people who vote for Trump. The first 6 are just made up hokey pokey for you to once again demonize those who support Trump, learning nothing in the process of this election.
As long as you're white and a man and straight and Christian, the list goes on.
You could almost say that list can, in fact, include people of color and LGBT groups who want to make America great again too, huh? It's like your own straw man is looking you in the face and saying, "Bitch, you crazy!"
Hate is no longer banished to the sidelines.
You are right, but not for the reasons you think. Hate comes in all forms, and your declaration of "Make America Again" only being applicable to
white and a man and straight and Christian
shows that you hate these demographics by principle and only for principle of those things. We get to see full frontal coverage of cretins like you contradicting yourselves, sending the wolves on those you claim to protect so long as they hold to your rigid mindset, and I get to watch and laugh as your own ideology tears itself apart.
Discrimination and prejudice are no longer fringe positions, if they ever were in the first place. I don't think they were.
Don't you mean you feel they never were in the first place? And yes, Those two words weren't thrown around so haphazardly like hello or goodbye back then. But that fault lies on you, those who claim that if you so much as even look at a woman, you are raping her.
A fire has been quietly kindling in homes across the nation, hidden behind closed doors and screens, on the tip of white America's tongue and quickly swallowed to keep up the guise of equality.
The only poetic verse you managed to spill in this very talky, dialogued, free verse you claim to be a poem. Now, am I supposed to snap my fingers because you kowtow to my ideological expectations? Or am I actually supposed to have scrutiny to your claims? Beside the point, the guise of equality of which you have birthed as you subdue hard-working class people for people of color and trans on the basis of them being colored and trans, and the fire of which you, so to speak, are burning, are those who have become fatigued by your constant navel-gazing and slandering people for their ideas rather than the ideas themselves. So I watch you throw yourself to the fire and burn as you roast away, constantly claiming it was my fault for doing so, as Lacey Green watches. Hey, Lacey, what do you think about the election results? I'll sigh too for having to do a response to Jugglies.
It happened, didn't it? It's not a nightmare that I'm in. It really happened.
Yep, it surely did. Your million-faceted echo chamber won't save you now.
I have some feels to get off of my chest.
And what a chest it is to get off to, huh? Oh, sorry. My internalized misogyny kicking in. Also, feels before reals, people.
I need to put it somewhere.
How about in the closet where we never get to see it again because it's irrelevant to the hard truth?
So if you're all electioned out, which I totally understand.
Yeah, I bet those protesters are quite plumb tuckered out of destroying public property in the name of a democratically elected official, too.
My sweet sex posse babes, the Trumpocalypse has arrived.
Whoa! I never heard of this. Even when it's still another 2 months before Trump is inaugurated, no less? Are you looking into your pair of crystal balls into the future?
Y'all know me well enough. I value equality. I think it's so important. Inclusion, human dignity, avoiding World War III.
Then thank God Emperor Trump that he doesn't want to go saber-rattling with Russia, because if he did, that would in fact spur World War III. But gender equality and inclusion trumps overall genocide and militaristic armada now, doesn't it?
And that's why last night was terrifying.
I bet you took that Huffington Post poll with Hillary Clinton at a 98% chance really seriously, didn't you? You never thought to infer the possibility that Trump could win as a result of Hillary being so awful, or that your meandering about there being a patriarchy and that we need to deal with a fake wage gap could have made people vote Trump despite his policy decisions over people like you who want to control what people think and say and do with their own fucking lives, now could it?
I am so sad, and I am so angry, and I know that for many of you, your spirit has been crushed.
My spirits are quite fine, thank you. They'll rest easy knowing that your entire worldview just got shell-shocked by nothing more than reality kicking at your door. As for those you claim to peek inside of your heads, you don't know a goddamn thing about what they are feeling right now. Yes, some are frustrated, but once again, like with Marina, you do not speak on behalf of the chosen demographic, especially of women.
So it's not really clear what exactly the future holds for us yet.
So, if you yourself are not sure what future lays ahead, how can you be confident that the Trumpocalypse will occur? As far as we know, Trump is already moderated on a lot of his pet issues, including the one of putting Clinton to task for her corruption. So for all we know, he could be just another middle-of-the-road establishment Republican and nothing more.
But if we go by the election cycle, things do look bleak.
What do you mean? The fact that Trump also has a majority Republican Senate and House? Sure, that does pave the way for Trump to get some of his policy decisions enacted, but how is deconstructing the TPP and building that wall going to be the death of civilization as you so thoughtfully created in your own vortex of imagination?
Millions of us, myself included, could lose our health insurance.
Actually, you're the only one regarding this video. Don't pretend that you speak for everyone, you don't. Don't make me call you a patronizing cunt like with Marina. Don't make me go there. As far as I can tell, Trump wants to reform and fix the Obamacare in a way that is actually beneficial to society. This is not to say whether he'll put one addendum to it and call it Trump Care, or completely bewilder the system entirely, but I'm drawing up speculation, as are you, so it's best to say we don't have the knowledge to know until he actually does it.
There could be serious cuts to scientific research, to climate change and clean energy efforts.
I am quite surprised that of all the ladies I'm rattling on about, Lacey is the only one who draws actual concern about the Trump victory based on his policy decisions, rather than the constant painting of a patriarchal system. Although Lacey Green has been two heads on some issues beforehand, and a lot of the scientific research that Lacey does herself is faulty and comes in with a conclusion, rather than making a conclusion based on the evidence shown.
To government programs for our sick and our poor, to education.
Okay, now I just think she's trying to hit every nail that's a hot button issue to the liberal audience to reinforce the notion that she's gone into the thick layers of Trump's issues. Once again, we don't know, so it's best to see what he's actually going to do rather than spear speculation.
Planned Parenthood will be target number one.
I know that's a big thorn on the side of the Republican Party, but I don't recall Trump ever trying to dismantle the Planned Parenthood section like most Republicans have done. In fact, Trump is perhaps the most unorthodox of Republican choices, as he changed the paradigm of the Republican Party as he was running in it. And this is an effort from Lacey, like with most SJWs, to draw the idea that people wanted Planned Parenthood shut down and not that they were done with the PC culture that infested the media and weren't going to vote for your establishment candidate and wanted the establishment changed for better or for ill.
My LGBT family now lives under a vice president who literally believes in electrocuting the gay out of children.
Yes, he is insane, but Mike Pence as VP doesn't count for shit anymore in the presidency. All a VP is now is just a placeholder in the event that Trump dies during his election, which could happen by people like you who want to assassinate him because his ideas are just too damn harmful. And once again, Lacey, who is at fault for getting this man into office? While I'm not seeing a lot of finger-pointing on your part, you're cleverly trying to avoid any responsibility on your part to get Trump elected in the first place.
President Trump openly admits to sexual assault and is on trial for child rape.
Both cases I have never heard or never went in any further. Trump has claimed that the sexual assault claims thrown at him could be mere cases of someone spurring their 15 minutes of fame, and judging from the fact that the charges of which were dropped weeks after, does solidify that claim.
He is proudly endorsed by the KKK, North Korea, Putin.
Please, sir, could I have another spoonful of guilt by association? It's funny that people expected Trump to disavow those supremacists who voted for Trump, yet when the Black Lives Matter group is right up the ass of Hillary Clinton, the same is not expected, despite BLM being the polar opposite of the KKK. And as for Putin, I do not have any qualms with his rhetoric about there being a gay propaganda, and that's something of which I don't think we should go to war over. Are you under the impression that war with Russia will make everything so much better? Because I'm sure that sentiment was shared during the Cold War.
Are we in the upside down right now?
Am I taking crazy pills?
Because that's what it feels like. How the fuck did this happen?
Why, thank you, Lacey, for actually having some curiosity as to how Trump won. Let me break it down for you. Hillary Clinton felt entitled to the presidency, so with her establishment-backed influence, rigged the primaries to kick Bernie out of the competition, as he actually had fucking principles, and set Trump up as the easiest candidate to compete against. As a result, the DNC adamantly sided with a corrupt, pandering politician under the basis of equality and vagina, and used the influence of the media to constantly, without any care in the world, throw slurs of bigoted and racist at those who sided with Trump on his principles, which seemed plentiful, and the Democrats who initially sided with Bernie were not going to stand idly by while you taint the liberal mindset with this identity politics bullshit and either conceded the vote or voted for Trump despite Hillary, like I did. Not only that, your constituency was so overly confident that Hillary would win that a lot of them didn't vote under the pretense that Hillary would win by default, much to the chagrin that the media had convinced themselves that Hillary was the ideal candidate of choice through rose-tinted lens. So as a result of Trump's upset over Hillary, People like you are now surprised that your wonderful fictitious utopia didn't come to fruition. To make it short, people voted for Trump. Simple as that.
First and foremost, because we let it happen. And that's like the hard part to swallow.
Now, I know you people watching me are probably thinking that Lacey is talking about the left and the media allowing themselves to get so wrapped up in petty squabbles about race and gender that resulted in Trump's victory. But I think what she is actually saying is that the left and the media didn't try hard enough to get themselves wrapped up in said petty squabbles. Let's find out.
But also, from where I'm sitting, our political establishment failed us.
Once again, I'm taken aback to the amount of self-awareness Lacey has compared to the other SJWs reacting, although I'm sure this is a load of shit and she still thinks that the patriarchy chose Trump and not that people chose Trump.
Lies and corruption in Washington warmed people to a candidate that is completely unqualified and has no experience.
That would be Hillary Clinton you were talking about, right? I hope that you are, because you're so close to realizing why you lost.
And even more overtly, people say that racism and sexism are over. No, they're not over.
You will never end sexism or racism. You can't funnel out every person who holds a prejudice or grudge with a certain demographic. But you can ensure that the government you live in does not run on sexism and racism, which I believe currently does not. How could a sexist and racist government even suppose the idea of Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton as a democratic choice in the first place? It's just like BLM saying that systematic racism still exists despite Barack Obama being democratically elected.
They are very much a part of our social fabric.
If you are talking about the open and blatant hatred of men by third-wave feminists and the open and blatant hatred of white people by BLM, you would be right, but even I wouldn't say that is an aspect of systematic racism. It certainly can lead to systematic racism if BLM and third-wave feminism get their way, but that has not happened yet.
Trump saw that. He saw the undercurrent of misogyny and racism, and he rode that wave to electoral college victory.
And just when I thought you were actually realizing that your Democratic establishment was completely at fault for allowing Trump to win. Also, I didn't know you could pick into the mind of someone that you yourself said weren't clear on what he's going to do once he actually does become president. But it's safe to say that you don't know what or why he wants to run for president. As far as I could tell, he saw a kangaroo court of typical establishment media spewing the same garbage rhetoric of private interests and backhanded deals, and of the government of which was being fueled by the TPP, as well as allowing illegal immigrants to enter in our country so that corporations could pay them a pittance compared to the federal minimum, and thought to himself that perhaps he could change the dynamic of it. You little cronies were the ones who rode the wave of slandering Trump as someone who made his campaign behind a wall of racism and sexism, and you fuckers couldn't figure out when that became real or fiction, so all in all, people dismissed you because you cried wolf so many fucking times that you have now officially trivialized sexism and racism. As for those who make pretentious repositories out of feminism, let's get to the tip of the iceberg, Anita Sarkeesian. Fortunately, this one is short.
Over the past week, women, people of color, trans and queer folks, and many others across the U.S. have been targeted in over 400 reported acts of aggression and hate.
Jesus Christ. First sentence in, and Anita is already setting up a wall of people behind her when she caves into the evidence to prove contrary. Also, citation needed, who has been doing these acts of aggression and hate? It couldn't be the regressive left that have marched protests in key cities and in key states that went overwhelmingly to Clinton to shout their anger of a democratically elected official, could it? I know I'm just speculating, but it just seems a mite more plausible than some 400 unrelated acts, so to speak.
This is unacceptable.
Unacceptable!
Feminist frequency is founded on the belief that media matters.
Isn't that the most generalized load of crock I've ever heard? You only give a shit about media when it panders and reinforces your own ideology, like with the games Gone Home and Life is Strange, both practically non-video games that tap into the intricacies of life or something. I don't know. I'm half asleep just thinking about it now.
And that there's a very real connection between the representations and values embedded in our popular media and the abuses we're currently seeing throughout the country.
I think that's a big problem with your tropes versus women series. You never figured that a game in which involves killing hordes of demon monsters might in fact not represent the current society we live in because it's set in a fictional world for the player to project themselves into and get immersed in. Also, what abuses? It just sounds like you weaseling your way out of actually providing a single aspect of said abuse to paint the idea that it's on a worldwide scale.
Last week, I posted a video responding to the election results and reminding us all that we have to call out and address sexism, racism, and all forms of bigotry, especially as they pervade mass media.
Yeah, but you don't give a shit if said sexism, racism, and bigotry comes from the Black Lives Matter group or the third wave feminists sneering to others that they can't possibly know hardship because of their sex and race, right? Because power plus privilege, right? What a fucking charlatan.
That's what Feminist Frequency does, and our work is critical right now.
Notice that she says we instead of me, which seems to imply that she is slowly distancing herself from the feminist frequency medium she so cares about. Another thing to note, this is the same chair and the same room in which Anita did her Kickstarter video for Tropes vs. Women 5 years ago. What a time capsule that is, and look at her then compared to now. Anita looks like she fucking walked around that room without sleeping the entire election night.
We've heard from you that, like us, you're feeling grief and helplessness and rage and are looking for ways to actively combat this hate.
The only thing you'll hear from me is that you are a con artist shill who rides off the back of the damsel in distress trope while trying to criticize the damsel in distress trope. As for Trump winning, I'm all fine, but I wouldn't lose my marbles if Hillary won either. I would be upset, but I wouldn't be making a temper tantrum and damaging property in the name of it, unless there is clear evidence to show she rigged the election in her favor.
So, throughout the month of December, we'll be sharing ways that you can plug in and get involved in the struggle right now and for years ahead.
Here's my 101 ways to throw a Molotov cocktail and Feels Before Reels, the struggle against Trump to help you all get started.
Because of your enthusiastic belief in our work, Feminist Frequency has achieved so much over the past 4 years.
Your greatest accomplishment of Feminist Frequency has been to con people out of $400,000 on a project that is 3 years late and barely even half done, all while proclaiming that the entire foundation is a non-profit organization, and they expect lightning to strike in the same place twice with your Ordinary Women project as well.
But we still need your help.
Please tell me where I should send $2,000 to you so that you can prevent Donald Trump from winning. I'm wincing in anticipation.
Your contribution at this crucial time ensures that we can keep progressing over the next 4 years.
Or to regress into the authoritarian Marxist that you really are, as Trump continues making waves across the U.S. in those 4 years. But don't worry, a Benjamin a day keeps the opinions at bay.
Your donation today can help us continue to do this vital work.
You know, it's one thing to double down on the election results, and it's a whole other thing when you actually try to profit from said election results. Anita, that money isn't going to go anywhere except in the back of your fucking pocket where it's always been, where the remaining $400K you have has always been. It'd be like if a street preacher were to say that the world is going to end if Obama wins, and the only way to stop the catastrophe is to give him $500. You are so fucking blatant about your scam artistry in your video, it will surprise me that people will actually donate to this non-project.
Let's support each other by challenging unjust representations of individuals and groups, and by standing up against hatred and harassment in our communities.
All of which will magically be solved if those dollars go to me. Fuck putting donations to charities that will actually realistically affect change. No, let's burn another $100K into yet another delayed video series where I challenge the patriarchy. Jesus Christ, Anita. And I thought Marina was bereft of principles. At least Marina isn't trying to profit from this horse shit unlike you. God damn. Well, that was all the people I wanted to rebut against, as I think Trump's victory will mark the official downward spiral of this feminist leftist mentality. Hopefully the salt will pour further down into their eyes until they have to see the monster they created themselves.